Blu-ray player or anything is going to be able to play back this quality. The next option here, so this is the frame rate, of course, is the record setting. So here you get to select your bit rate, your color subsampling. So you've got up to 280 megabits with 422 color subsampling and 10-bit color. That's available here, and these options will change depending on the file formats that you're using as well. So for instance, if I back up and I go to maybe the All Intra 4K, I think a lot of people are probably interested in understanding what's available here. So here you've got that All Intra capability up to 60 frames, and of course up to 600 megabits internal. Now that's the only option here, so it's grayed out. And when I try to select it, it says, hey, this is the only option basically. So you can't change that. When you select All Intra 4K at 60 frames per second, it's going to be what it is.
Van, while we're talking about these 4K settings, we got a question in from YouTube asking about when recording in 4K, does the screen black out if you're using an external monitor?
So it does not. So that was something that we actually got a lot of feedback about. So yeah, if you were recording to an external monitor, you can actually set that up as well. So and a lot of those external recorder questions, you're going to be spending a lot more time down here in the setup tab, which is where you would find typically your HDMI settings and that type of thing. So I can kind of get to that.
And kind of related to that, we got another question in from YouTube asking about the CF Express media and what it will be used for. Just thinking about that related to where you would go external versus what you would do internal.
Yeah. So again, we didn't want to compromise with regards to the capabilities of the camera or anything like that. So you can actually do quite a bit internal. Almost all of the record modes that are available, you can shoot internally with the CF Express card, which is here on the left side. This is a standard SD card here, so you can kind of see the size difference here. But depending on that card, you should be able to shoot everything. The only time that you would want to shoot to an HDMI external recorder at this point is if you need that 16-bit RAW, which is massive. That's the only thing that you can't do to the card, basically.
Gotcha. I interrupted you as you were going through the menus, so please continue.
No problem. We're doing this live. So yeah, I wanted to show for that that question, the person who asked the question, this is where you would get to the HDMI output settings. And then of course you can select record media and HDMI output, all the resolutions. Here's the raw settings here. I'm not connected to a 4K switch, so unfortunately I can't stream 4K out to my HDMI right now. But that's something that you can test out in the field at some point whenever the product is available. But yeah, so the other thing I want to show is up here at the top, we've moved the My Menu option to the very top. So it's much faster to get there. Of course, you can actually go in and set up the My Menu so that it shows up first when you hit the menu button on the back of the camera. And this is really nice because this is fully customizable. I put in a few options here: peaking display, format the cards, record media settings. Just things that are a little more kind of deeper down in the menu that I want to be able to quickly access. And so, the My Menu system is really kind of a nod to, hey, if you are getting to this point where you want this to be an extension of just your thought process, we don't want to limit you to that, to how we've organized it, so you can actually organize it yourself. I imagine, the way I describe this to a lot of my customers is I say, imagine if you got in a rental car and you could personally move the windshield wipers and the hazard switch and all the things around so that you could access them when you wanted to. It's kind of that kind of concept. So we're building products that are really meant for efficient use by any photographer. And who's to say the way that we lay this out is the best? We've got a lot of feedback from our customers about, oh, I wish this made more sense. Some of these features are kind of on a different tab than I imagined they would be. So here, we've got a lot of these, a lot of the feedback from those customers, and we reorganized a lot of things. So For instance, and you'll also see, the icons change a little bit too. So over on the left side of the camera menu, you see there's a little film strip beneath the camera shooting tab icon and the exposure icon and the autofocus manual focus icon. So if I switch the dial to still photography mode, and then I go back into the main menu, there you see it switches to stills. And up here under image quality, that menu page has changed. So it makes, you still have access to, the movie settings down here if you want to, but now the things that you use in that mode bubble kind of up to the top.
So it's it's almost like it's dynamically adjusting for you as you move through.
Exactly, yep. And it just makes more sense. So you can actually, if I'm looking for, let's see here, image stabilization settings, right here, zoom. This is for clear image zoom or optical zoom, shooting display, all this good stuff. So, let's say I'm in movie mode, and I want to bring up, picture profiles. So I can actually go into my settings here, and under, here we go, color tone, sorry. Here's a picture profile. And so I can go in, I can adjust, if I want to shoot S-Log 3, S-Log 2, they're going to be all here. So these picture profiles haven't changed. They're all still here. They're the same as they were in some of the previous alpha bodies that we've had. PP10 is the newest, which has HLG or hybrid log gamma, kind of an instant HDR. So go ahead and select that there.
Van, we got a question that came in about from a live shooter asking about HDMI resolutions for output. What are the HDMI resolutions for a live shooter?
Yeah, so if you're outputting via HDMI, let's just go right into the menu and select that there. So 4K or 2160p, 1080p, and then of course 1080i. Auto is going to sense, of course, automatically, but yeah.
And for the frame rates?
So the frame rate is going to be up to 120p, just like you would have internally as well.
Gotcha.
So you can shoot 4K 120p, 4K 60, 4K 24, or 30. So.
And we got a question in from YouTube about the about the frame rates, asking if the sensor is cropped for 120, 240p modes.
It is not. The nice thing is, again, we kind of talk about the uncompromising design that we've done. The A7S Mark III is able to shoot full sensor width, and actually this comes up from time to time where customers kind of say, well, why is it a 12 megapixel sensor? And it's on purpose. If you're shooting with, the sensor itself is a 4:3 aspect ratio, and if you're shooting 16:9 aspect ratio, you're going to get kind of the top and the bottom kind of cropped off a little bit. And there's actually about 2 megapixels on top and 2 megapixels on bottom that aren't being used if you're using this full sensor width. That being said, when you shoot 4K, it's actually in QFHD 16:9 aspect ratio. You're actually getting a 1:1 pixel ratio for your video footage. So exactly 8.3 megapixels, which is exactly the resolution for 4K. Yeah.
Okay, and can you back out and show us how you navigate the menus using the touch screen?
Yeah, so let me switch to my other camera here. I'm going to pull out the HDMI so I can see on the back of the screen here. And yeah, so you can tap. Well, you know what? First thing you need to do is turn on the touch screen. So I'm going to come here, and I can just tap here. I can scroll up and down, and then of course go in, do all this stuff. I can still use the navigation keys here around the jog wheel. I can use the multi-selector here as well. And then again, the nice thing is, if I'm standing behind the camera, this is all nice. You know, I can tab between the different pages here. But if I'm standing in front of the camera, you know, I'll need to flip this screen out so that I can see it, and then I can still use the touch panel to adjust that.
And as we're doing this kind of a virtual walk around, we got a question regarding that flip screen and the menu. Is it possible to turn the menu around, or rather to turn the flip screen around in a protection mode?
Yep, so it'll flip out, rotates, and then of course can close up, so you can prevent some accidental knocks and dings to that LCD screen as well.
And we also got another question from Facebook while we're looking at the outside of the camera. And this is a little bit related, I think, to the questions we were getting regarding the heat sink in the previous segment. Is the body weather sealed?
Yeah, so the body is weather sealed, and one of the things that I noticed with especially the doors is, it seems like the channels here are deeper, so it actually feels really good in terms of, you know, how solid they are to press in and pull open. So definitely, you know, we'll have to see, you know, how the public tests it out, but it looks and feels much more robust than previous models, of course. So pretty confident in that. It's going to be really good.
While we're looking at those connectors right there, this camera has full HDMI connector, is that correct?
Yep, so I'm using a full HDMI cable here, and actually what I'll do is I'll take off this cable string relief here, so you can kind of see a little bit more. So the another thing that I noticed, and I'm not sure if this is final, is, you know, these little anchors here for the strap. They typically would kind of flip around, but and make noise when it clangs against the body of the camera. So hopefully they continue to use these anchor clips, because if you're going to be using this on a gimbal or something, you don't have to take the time to try to take these little anchors off. You know, they'll be nice and noise-free. So you can see it takes a little bit of force, but you've got some really solid doors there, some really deep channels to keep that weather sealing really, really good. So yeah, full-size HDMI on the front here. So you'll notice this is typically where you would see a PC sync port for a flash, maybe an Ethernet jack if you're looking at the Alpha 9 Mark II, that type of thing. But with this particular camera, it's designed for video, for movie making. So a full-size HDMI jack there into that door.
I know that was a really highly requested item. For anybody who's, you know, monkeyed with the smaller connectors, having a full size is just such a nice feature, nice attention to detail.
Yeah, so you've got the mini jack here for an analog microphone if you're using a third-party microphone. Of course, you've got the headphone jack there for monitoring, the high-speed USB-C, and the multi-port or the USB micro. Another thing that I want to point out is, you know, we do have the multi-interface shoe, the return of the multi-interface shoe up here on top. So take the cover off. And you can see there's little pins at the top here. So if you're not familiar with Sony accessories and Sony cameras, this of course acts as a standard hot shoe, but also allows you to connect other accessories like you know, microphones. And the nice thing about the Sony microphones is that the camera body itself will power the microphone. So if you've ever used a third-party mic and they don't have a battery indicator that tells you how much battery life is left, you're always going to run that risk if you're going into an interview or going to a situation where you're trying to record audio, and if that light turns off and you don't see it, you know, half of your movie is basically going to be no audio. You know, so nice thing about this is, again, the additional connectors up top, not only do they power the external microphone, but also allow for digital audio pass-through. So for accessories like the XLR K3M, our new XLR adapter, that has a digital mode, so you can actually have less interference happening when the signal is getting from the microphone down into the file.
Van, we got a question from Facebook asking about the record button. Is it a dedicated record button?
So you can customize it, just like a lot of a lot of the buttons on our Sony bodies. You can customize a lot of these for your own layout. Let me pop this strainer leaf back on. So it's kind of a different shape, you know. So you kind of straddle the doors here between these two pieces, and then hold it kind of on there, press in the little plunger, and turn to kind of lock it in. And I'm going to plug back in my additional power source so that my battery doesn't run out. And the nice thing is, you know, I'm actually using a MacBook Pro charger to offer power delivery into the camera. So, you know, in previous models, if you used an external battery supply, it would run out, and it would still draw a little bit of battery from the internal battery, or a little bit of electricity from the internal battery. So, you know, eventually the camera would just turn off. Here, in theory, I haven't tested it out myself yet, but you could, you know, go as long as you needed. So, but yeah, so let's.
And is that battery? I'm sorry, is that battery the Z battery, or is it a new battery for this camera?
So it is a Z battery. It's the same, yeah, same as previous models. So, and this will also be compatible with the VGC 4EM vertical grip. So you can have dual battery capacity, same grip you would purchase for the Alpha 9 Mark II or the Alpha 7R Mark IV. So let me switch back to the inside of the camera here. And you know, you had that question about the dedicated record button. So the nice thing is you can go in and you can customize pretty much, you know, all the buttons on the back. And definitely, this is one of the nice things about the Sony system, is just being able to have that capability. Because again, just like the My Menu, we may not put things where you want them, and so to limit you to that, you know, is not what we're trying to do. So yeah, so I would go here to the Setup tab and Operation Customize, and then here your custom key settings. So if I go into let's do Movie Custom Key Settings, and you'll notice again a new menu here. By default, you know, it's just going to follow what you've customized in the stills mode. But I really like how, again, you know, you've got the column on the left, and makes it just a little easier to kind of see. And then, of course, the corresponding numbers on the left side are highlighted on the right side on the diagram. So if I wanted to go in and customize that record button that's up on top, I just go here to the top, and then I change this to something else. So by default, that's where the C1 button is, and that's where you know, you would activate white balance. C1 is still white balance. It's just the C1 button has moved. But if you want to put it back because you're using, you know, maybe the Alpha 7R Mark IV and the Alpha 7S Mark III, you don't want to confuse the custom buttons, then you can go in and completely customize this.
And then we were talking a minute ago about the weather sealing, and the question about the new heat sink and overheating and everything, which is not a problem with this camera. But can you talk a little bit about how that heat sink does not affect the weather sealing?
So the heat sink is internal. So, you know, if you look at some of the Pro cams that we have, you know, because of the way that the processor is set up, and it generates quite a bit of heat, they've installed, you know, active cooling systems. In an active cooling system, you actually have to have a mechanism to move air around and dissipate the heat. So that usually means you're going to have a fan, and also you're going to have vents. So you know, it's really important that we kept the weather sealing as good as possible on this camera. So you know, the designers went in and put in a really amazing passive system that's completely sealed. So you're able to dissipate heat throughout the entire body, unlike before, but you're not having points of entry for debris or for moisture, dust, and that type of thing. So there's no vents to help move air out, but it's using a combination of designs and materials and things to dissipate the heat without it.
Then we got a question about IBIS in the camera. First of all, can you describe or explain the IBIS modes that the camera has, and whether it will help with third-party lenses with adapters?
Yeah, so the in-body image stabilization, which we call steady shot. Let me switch back over to, yeah. So the in-body image stabilization that we call steady shot does work in conjunction with lenses. And, you know, we can't guarantee the operation of a third-party lens and third-party accessories, but of course, if you're adapting Sony alpha mount, A mount lenses to the E mount here on this camera. You can have both the optical stabilization as well as the in-body stabilization kind of work conjunctively to really help stabilize if you're hand holding the camera and that type of thing. So of course, the 5 axes that you normally would get is of course the pitch, just like this, and a yaw, and then of course X, Y, which I can't really show you here, but basically shifting up and down, left and right on the same focal plane. And then of course the rotational, of course, by pressing the shutter button, you do have some sort of rotational motion that's going to be introduced. And so 5-axis stabilization definitely helps quite a bit with a lot of that. Now we've introduced a new mode to our steady shot, which is the active mode. So active mode, that's the only time that you will see a slight kind of crop in. And it's very slight, very minimal. I think it's about 10% of the frame, so very small amount. But what it's doing is it's using the gyroscopes inside to map out the type of motion that's happening, and then actually apply a lot more advanced kind of image stabilization. You'll see some YouTube videos, I'm sure, later on, kind of demonstrating those modes. It's amazing, and it's especially with the size of the sensor that we're talking about. Sony's really outdone themselves in terms of all the things that they've been able to pack into this little camera body.
Then we got a question, what is the highest all-eye resolution and frame rate internally?
Yeah, so again, let's switch to the inside of the camera and pull up the main menu. If I go up to the shooting tab, and go over to image quality, this is XAVCS all intra 4K, and I go to movie settings. You've got 24p, 30p, and 60p. So 24p, and again, in the all intra modes, you don't really get the option to change the bit rate. There's no lower options. It's basically kind of pedal to the floor. You're going to get the highest bit rates. Even if you try to select it, it's going to give you that warning. 240 megabits here at 24 frames per second. 300 megabits at 30 frames per second. And then 600 megabits at 60 frames per second. Okay.
Gotcha. And from Facebook, we got a question, does the camera work with the new Commander remote?
Yes. So let's see. So I believe they're talking about the Bluetooth remote. There's a Bluetooth remote that we have. It does have built-in Bluetooth. Let's go down to the network tab. And you do have the ability to pair that Bluetooth remote. There is an infrared option as well, kind of a remote that we've had around for a while. You can use that remote as well. And then you can also use your smartphone. So if you've downloaded the Imaging Edge mobile application to transfer images, you can also use that during shooting mode to change some settings and to stop, record, and to monitor your video as well.
Dan, we've only got just a couple minutes left in this segment. I just want to ask you about the color science in the camera. Tell me about the color science in the A7S III.
Yeah, so the Alpha 7S Mark III, it's been a long time coming. A lot of people have been waiting for this for the last 5 years, ever since the Alpha 7S Mark II came out. And we've learned quite a bit since that time. And what especially is that we've learned is what customers want. And the color science, of course, is one of those things that has kind of been very subjective to a lot of folks. But the warmer kind of skin tone seems to be a popular kind of ask. And so one of the things that we've done is, since that last 5 years, we've introduced many different cameras like the Venice, the FS7 Mark II, the FS5 Mark II, and the FX9, which all have new color science. Let me switch back over to here. Yeah, they all have new color science, and we've gotten a lot of feedback around that, and customers are loving it. So that's based off of that, we do work quite a bit with our cinema and broadcast development partners within the company, and we share a lot of information, and so that's how we make better products. Because a lot of times it's the same customer. I've got several customers who are purchasing the FX9, and they're intending to purchase the Alpha 7S Mark III and run those together. So, being able to match up the color is really key as well, because if you're shooting with multiple cameras, you want to be able to have that ability. Of course, picture profiles helps if you do some, color grading in post. But right out of the camera, right off the bat, it's got really pleasing skin tones and color science.
Dan, we've got to leave it here for right now. Thanks again for joining us today. I know you'll be back later on to talk more along with Mike Bublo and give us more of a tour. In a moment, we'll be back with Renan Ozturk and Kurt Morgan.
Cool, thank you.